Hello, my name is Rob Reynolds. Welcome to Mat-073. Today we're going to look at our second section in Chapter 1. We're going to be still solving equations like Section 1.1, but this time all the equations are going to have a bunch of variables in them or letters in them. So students typically find this very difficult. It deals with a lot of formulas that they're not comfortable with, and then it deals with solving equations, which also they're not comfortable with. So first of all, perimeter is the distance around, so we're going to add s plus s plus s plus s, or we could rewrite that as 4s. If you had the perimeter of a rectangle, we usually call that length times width, so that would be, perimeter would be twice the length plus twice the width. The area of this thing would just be length times width. In this case, s times s is s squared. If I were to ask for the area of this, we would say length times width. Notice sometimes we've got the same, this is called a trapezoid. It's still length times width, but sometimes we call those bases and heights. The width of this would be this distance here, which is equivalent to its height. So you can see it almost forms a rectangle in here, and that's why the formula is the same, because if I were to take this little triangle here and place it right over here, I would get the rectangle. So right here is your rectangle. It's still, so sometimes we call it base times height, sometimes length times width. The area of a circle is pi r squared. Don't get that confused with the circumference. The circumference is sometimes 2 pi r, but twice the radius is the diameter. So if this is the radius of the circle, twice the radius would be the diameter of the circle. So sometimes instead of saying pi times diameter, sometimes we say 2 pi r. So again, that's a quick overview of some formulas that you'll need. Sometimes the formulas will be given, sometimes you'll have to come up with the formulas on your own. For example, I do not know the formula for mass index. So hopefully they'll give us a formula for this, because this is not something that I expect you to have memorized. These I expect you to have memorized. This one, I don't think I've ever seen it before. So here it comes. Mass index, I don't know why they don't let it be m, but they're going to let it be I instead for index, I suppose. W is going to be the Oprah's weight, and then H would be the height, and I'm just going to say, okay, well, we want to find out what her weight is. So maybe the very first question will say solve for W. Well, in the previous section, we learned how to solve. So to solve, we're not going to do, we're going to undo. And the first thing I'm going to try to undo here is this division by multiplying both sides by h squared. So I will get, let's see, I'll work down here. H squared I is equal to 704.5 times W. The next thing to solve for W is to divide by 704.5. So 704.5 divided by both sides, and I have a nice formula now for W. W is equal to her height squared times her mass index divided by 704. So if we finish this up and plug in some numbers that were given, let's see, what's given here? It's given that she's 5 feet 7 inches, but be careful, the height is in this formula has to be converted to inches. So let's see, 5 feet, if I multiply that by 12, I'll get 60 inches, plus the other 7 inches gives me a total of 67 inches. So I can plug in for her height right here. So I'll say 67 inches squared times her I, which is her mass index, which was given as, oh, there it is, 23.5, and divide by 704.5. Then I can take my calculator and calculate her weight. What is that, 150? Yep, 150 pounds. Oprah only weighs 100. Okay, I'm going to leave that alone. Next, we're going to solve for x. Solving for x, we're going to undo what's happening to x, which is increasing by b. So I'm going to subtract b and say y minus b is equal to x. That seems simpler than the other one. There it is. Y minus b is equal to x. So undoing what's to undo multiplication, I usually divide, but instead of dividing by a fraction, I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal. I can do anything I want as long as I do it to both sides. So I'm going to choose to multiply both sides by 4/3. So notice that everything on the right side cancels except for the w minus 15, and over here I'm left with a 4/3 a. And I hope you recognize 4/3 a is the same thing as 4a divided by 3. You can write it either way. The last thing we need to do is just add 15 to both sides. So I get 4/3 a plus 15 is equal to w. And they chose not to write it as 4/3 a. They did 4a divided by 3, but again, same thing. So here are some rules that they're using. Again, it's similar to the rules that we learned in section 1.1. Combining like terms, getting all the variables on the same side, so on and so forth. So be careful. Students find this very difficult when I stick an m on the left and an m on the right, and then I say solve for m, because it's hard unless you know the trick, which is to get all the m's on the same side and factor. So I'm going to throw this m on the other side. So I'm going to leave the y on this side. I'll have mx sub 1 minus mx sub 2. So again, the goal there was to get not y by itself, but to get all the m's, what I'm trying to solve for, on the same side and isolate that. And then once I have that done, I could factor out an m. So you can't solve for m here. I can't combine. These are not like terms. Now if it would have said something like, oh, 5m minus 4m, then I could just, combine like terms. But x to the x sub 1 and x sub 2 are two different variables, so I can't subtract these. So the only goal then is to factor out, leaving me with x sub 1 minus x sub 2. And then to solve for m, I can divide by that x sub 1 at x sub 2 quantity. And again, I can't subtract those because those are not like terms, but there's my final answer. M is equal to y divided by x sub 1, x sub 2. Solving for p, this is the exact same scenario, but this is a little bit easier because they gave me that all the p's on the same side. If they didn't give me p's on the same side, that would be my first goal. But again, the goal here is when you have two p's, and I can't add these, those are not like terms again, the goal is to factor. So factor out a p literally means divide each term by p. Don't forget about this 1. And then divide by 1 plus RT. So P is equal to A divided by 1 plus RT. And this gets a little bit more complicated. Again, I've never seen this formula for chest rating before. But evidently this is the wins, this is the loss, and we'll have to read here. N is the number of games. I need to know R. R is the average rate. So let's see what they give me here. 8 is playing 8 games, so that must be N. So N must be the number of games. They win 5, they lose 3. Okay, and here's something, the average rating of the opponent. So that must be small r. The average rating, don't know what that is, but, and it says find the chess rating. So the chess rating formula must be the capital R. So let's see if we can fill in some things here. The chess rating is equal to the average rating plus 400 times her wins minus her losses, all divided by the number of games. The rest of this is just number crunching. Take your calculators out, probably number crunch this first, add 1205 to it. Make sure you can get a 1305. I'll let you practice that on your calculator, but I would definitely practice typing that in before a test. Oh good, 1305. Okay, a little bit harder solving this for L. To get L by itself, maybe the first thing I would do is undo this addition or subtraction. So let's subtract off small r from both sides. So I have capital R minus small r is equal to, ooh, this is going to get complicated. The next thing I probably want to do is multiply both sides by n. Again, just trying to get W by itself. So 400, the wins and the losses is equal to a mess. Well, you'll have to decide if you want to distribute this. I'll go ahead and distribute it. You don't have to, but I'll say NR minus, or N capital R and small r. I don't know if the author distributed that or not, but we will. So instead of doing over here, to get LW by itself, I wouldn't do. I would undo. So you could do, but that's not really the goal. To solve, we want to undo. So to undo what's happening to W, I would probably not distribute. I would probably divide both sides by 400. So that's a mistake that students usually make. They start doing, and I would like for you to think about undoing. Even though I did something over here, you always want to undo what's happening to the variable that you're solving. So if you divide, I just can't combine anything. I'm just going to leave this as a mess. And our last step is to add L to both sides. Ooh. The reason why this is messy is because generally, if I add L to both sides, I just don't think the author, I mean, maybe you should find a common denominator here, because now we always want to try to simplify this thing. And to simplify this, we could multiply the numerator by 400 and the denominator by 400 so that I could add. So then I would have a 400 nr minus n small r plus a 400L. And it's always more simplified if it's just one fraction opposed to a fraction plus a fraction. So let's see what the author has, because I've got a mess here for a solution. Hey, it might be... Now listen, I've got a positive 400L, and he's got a... Oh, I was supposed to solve for L? Oh, I solved for W. Sorry. So solving for, well, it helps if I read the directions. So solving for L, I want to subtract off this W. Okay, it wouldn't hurt for you to see this again, I suppose. Minus W equals, negative L. Ooh, this is even worse. So again, let me do this common denominator trick where I'm going to multiply this by 400 and get 400W over 400 so that I could get a common denominator of 400. So NR minus N, this is a small r, minus 400W is equal to, now don't leave the answer negative L either, so we probably want to multiply both sides by a -1 now, which is going to change all of these signs. Now don't distribute a -1 to the numerator and denominator, because that's like multiplying by 1. So if I change all these signs, I get n small r, I can put them in any order I want, minus n capital R, but this is a plus 400W. So I use the commutative property for the first two, just because I didn't want to start with a negative. All divided by 400 is equal to L. Ugh. That looks not fun. But let's see if it's similar to what the author has. I think we could have a couple different correct answers here. Hey, Oh, okay, so they have a negative in the denominator. See this negative that they have floating around in the denominator? I'm not a big fan of that. But this is a correct answer for L. It's just they haven't distributed the negative throughout. So looks like I like this answer better. So let's see. Very hard to do without a mouse. There it is. So NR, all they've done is just written it, again, they use the commutative property here. So I put the negative NR first, followed by the 400, but I think it's this solution. The point is, there's, oh, and here they didn't, I'm not a big fan of this, because again, we've got a number minus another number, so I don't think this is simplified. You should subtract, and I'm not a big fan of a negative in the denominator, so I like this answer. What would I count wrong on a test? I don't know. I would prefer you to simplify like I'm asking you to. So here it says solve for r cubed. This is a common formula for a sphere, the volume of a sphere. So to solve for r cubed, I would undo the pi and undo the 4/3. So 4/3 is being multiplied, so instead of dividing by a fraction, I would multiply by the reciprocal. So in this problem, I would encourage you to multiply both sides by 3/4, because what that does is cancels everything over here, leaving with just pi r cubed, and I get 3/4 times the volume. So to solve for r cubed, all I have to do is divide through by pi. Ooh, now this is an interesting, this is called a compound fraction right over here. If I have 3 divided by 4 and then divide it by pi, that's the same thing as 3 divided by 4 times 1 over pi, which I hope you recognize as 3 over 4 pi. So again, I was talking about simplifying earlier. I would continue to simplify. Don't leave compound fractions. This is 3 divided by 4 pi, because if you divide by 3 and divide by pi, that's the same thing as dividing by their products, times their volume is equal to r cubed. You could also write this as, I don't know why I wrote this r squared. I can't remember. I'm getting rid of it. You could also write this as 3v over 4 pi, because I could multiply this just straight across. So 3 times the v gives me that 3v. So I hope you recognize the different forms. That's what the author did as well. Solving for w, I would undo the 1/3 by multiplying both sides by 3. So 3n is equal to m t plus w. To solve for w, again, students are going to want to try to, they're so used to doing the distributive property, but remember that's doing. Stop doing when you're solving. You don't want to do, you want to undo. So I would not distribute the m. Instead, I would encourage you to divide both sides by m. And then solving for w, I would subtract off the t. And we're back to, well, what's the simplified version here? 3n minus m minus t is a good answer, but I would argue that a better answer would be, go ahead and see if you can't subtract by finding common denominators. Let's slip an m over here. So 3n minus mt all divided by the common denominator m. I don't know if that's more simplified or not. Let's see if the author takes the blue or the red. They actually did do it. Oh, they say or. So this author's saying, hey, we'll take it whether you do it or not. Again, I would prefer this. I'll have to make a decision whether I accept the orange or not. It is mathematically equivalent, but it's kind of like leaving an answer as 2/4. Yes, that's a good answer, but I really would prefer 1/2. Last example, we learned how to solve for q. If I can't combine like terms, the goal was to factor out a q by dividing each term by q. Just don't forget about this term. Q divided by q is a 1, and students will forget that 1 typically. And that's equal to z. My last step is to divide everything through by 1 minus ab to solve for q. And there's final solution. I hope you found this lesson helpful. If you have questions, email me.